On January 12, 2026, the tech industry received an announcement that was both significant and, in many ways, inevitable. In a joint statement, Apple and Google confirmed a multi-year collaboration. The core of the deal is straightforward. Apple will license Google's Gemini AI models to serve as a new foundation for Apple Intelligence, and, more critically, to finally deliver the long-overdue overhaul of Siri. On the surface, this appears to be a brilliant, almost necessary, strategic move. For years, Siri has felt like a relic, falling visibly behind in the most important technological race of the decade. This partnership, therefore, looks like a pragmatic shortcut, a way to instantly deliver on overdue promises and give users the world-class AI experience they have been waiting for. But this isn't just about a simple software update. There's a deeper shift happening here, and it raises an uncomfortable question. Is this pragmatic partnership actually a strategic surrender? Did Apple just invite a Trojan horse into its walled garden? In this video, we're going to examine the 5 hidden traps in the Apple-Google deal that could have significant long-term consequences for Apple's core principles, its market position, and the future of innovation. Before we examine the traps, it's important to understand the environment that led to this decision. This wasn't a deal made from a position of absolute strength. It was born from necessity. For years, Apple has been the undisputed king of vertical integration. Think of them as a master chef who insists on designing their own kitchen, forging their own knives, and growing every ingredient in their own private garden. But with the explosion of generative AI, they realized a key ingredient was missing for the most important dish on the menu. Their internal attempts, while ambitious, struggled to keep pace. Apple Intelligence, unveiled in 2024, fell short of its grand promises, and the complete Siri overhaul was repeatedly delayed. The revolution that was promised felt more like a minor evolution. This created a significant challenge. While Apple was spending a relatively modest $12.7 billion on capital expenditures, competitors like Google and Microsoft were pouring hundreds of billions into AI data center infrastructure. It was like Apple was building a garden shed, while its rivals were constructing entire city blocks of greenhouses. Apple found itself at a strategic crossroads. Continue a slow and uncertain internal development process, or partner with a leader to bridge the gap. They reportedly explored several options, but on January 12, 2026, they announced the choice was Google. This context is essential because it sets the stage for the compromises and risks that would follow. So let's dig into exactly what those traps are. Trap 1. The privacy paradox. The first and most immediate trap is what we can call the privacy paradox. Apple's entire brand is built on a simple promise. What happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. They have championed on-device processing and end-to-end encryption as a moral high ground. To their credit, they have gone to extraordinary lengths to try and extend this promise to the Google deal. When a query is too complex for the iPhone to handle, it's sent to a private cloud compute system. Imagine sending a secret message inside a locked, armored truck down a private, guarded road. Critically, Apple states that data is never stored, is not accessible to Apple employees, and is not used by Google to train its models. They have even made the system verifiable by independent experts to prove these protections are real. The Gemini model Apple is licensing was not born in a sterile lab. It was built by Google and trained on the public internet, Google search data, and the vast troves of information Google has collected for over 2 decades. The biases and worldview of that model are inherited from Google's data ecosystem. So, while Apple is building a secure tunnel to Google's AI, the AI at the other end is a product of a philosophy that is the polar opposite of Apple's. Critics call this privacy theater. You're protecting the query, but you are not protected from the inherent nature of the model answering it. This forces Apple to put an asterisk next to its privacy promise. It's no longer a simple guarantee. It's a complex system with a dependency on a company whose business model is predicated on data. Trap 2. The Antitrust Time Bomb. The second trap is an antitrust time bomb, and it's ticking loudly. To understand the risk, we have to look at history. For years, Google has paid Apple an estimated $20 billion annually to be the default search engine in Safari. That very deal was the subject of a landmark antitrust case, where a judge ruled that Google used such agreements to illegally maintain a monopoly. The lesson was clear. The power of the default is immense. It's like a supermarket placing one brand of soda at the end of every aisle and at every checkout counter. Sure, you can walk to aisle 7 to find a different brand, but most people will just grab the one that's always in front of them. Now, fast forward to 2026. Apple and Google have just created a deal that looks remarkably similar, but for a technology that is arguably more fundamental than search core intelligence. While the partnership is reportedly non-exclusive, the deep integration of Gemini into iOS and Siri creates an incredibly powerful default. This new AI deal recreates the exact dynamic from the search monopoly case. The switching costs for Apple to replace Gemini after it has become the backbone of Siri would be astronomically high, creating a powerful vendor lock-in. Regulators in the US and Europe, who are already investigating big tech's power in AI, will undoubtedly see this as a red flag. It looks like two of the world's most powerful companies are once again dividing up a market, rather than competing in it. Just as the search deal insulated Google from competition, this AI deal could do the same for the next generation of technology, potentially dragging both companies into years of legal battles. Trap 3. The dangerous power flip. For the better part of 2 decades, the financial relationship between Apple and Google has been clear. Google pays Apple. That $20 billion payment for search established a clear power dynamic. Apple was the landlord of the world's most valuable real estate, and Google was a tenant paying rent for a prime location. The third hidden trap of this AI deal is that it fundamentally flips that power dynamic. The terms of the AI partnership haven't been fully disclosed, but according to Bloomberg, Apple is paying Google approximately $1 billion per year for the license, with some analysts estimating the total deal could reach $5 billion over its full duration. The specific number is less important than the strategic shift it represents. Money is now flowing in a new, critical direction. For the first time, Apple is paying a rival for a core, foundational piece of its operating system's intelligence. Google is no longer just a tenant. It is now the architect of the building's foundation. The landlord has become dependent on the structural engineer, and when the engineer owns the blueprints to your foundation, they have a say in everything you build on top of it. This gives Google an unprecedented level of influence. Gemini will now be the engine powering Google's Android ecosystem and its chief rival, solidifying Google's position in the foundational model layer. This dependency changes the negotiating table for all future deals, and over time, that reliance grows. Apple, the company that prides itself on controlling its own destiny, has now made its future AI roadmap dependent on the priorities and goodwill of its biggest competitor. Trap 4. The Atrophy of Innovation. The fourth trap is more subtle, but perhaps the most damaging in the long run. The atrophy of internal innovation. When a company chooses to license a critical technology instead of building it, it gains speed, but sacrifices the institutional knowledge that comes from solving hard problems itself. It's like using a calculator for every math problem. You get the answers fast, but over time, your ability to do math in your head disappears. We have already seen this movie play out with Apple and Search. The lucrative Google search deal effectively killed any serious internal effort at Apple to build a competing search engine. Why spend billions creating something from the ground up when a competitor is willing to pay you a fortune just to use theirs? The result was a non-aggression pact that cemented Google's monopoly. There is a very real danger that this AI deal will trigger the same outcome. By outsourcing the foundational layer to Google, Apple sidesteps an immense challenge. While analysts see this as a smart bridge strategy, bridges often become permanent fixtures. The existence of a reliable solution from Google can subtly erode the urgency of Apple's internal projects. The danger is that in 5 years, Apple could find itself permanently relegated to the user experience layer of the AI stack. Apple would become a master of designing beautiful car bodies, but would have forgotten how to build an engine. Trap 5. The erosion of the Apple brand. The final trap strikes at the very heart of what makes Apple, its brand. The Apple brand is a promise of uncompromising quality that comes from controlling the entire widget. Think of a luxury watchmaker like Rolex. The magic comes from knowing they engineered every tiny gear and spring in-house. Apple's history is defined by bold moves to bring core technologies under its own roof. They orchestrated a painful but triumphant transition away from Intel to their own Apple Silicon. They replaced Google Maps with their own solution to gain control. This philosophy is baked into the company's DNA. Outsourcing the brain of the iPhone to Google is a profound departure from this. It fundamentally changes the story Apple can tell about itself. No longer can Tim Cook speak of technology being at its best when hardware, software, and services are engineered together, under one roof. With this deal, there is a giant asterisk. It tacitly admits that there is a crucial part of the modern experience that Apple cannot build better. For the consumer, this can spark a dangerous question. If the AI that powers my iPhone is really just Google, why shouldn't I just buy a Pixel? If the best new features on the iPhone feel like rebranded Google services, it slowly chips away at Apple's unique selling proposition. The big picture. These 5 traps, the privacy paradox, the antitrust risk, the shift in power, the potential for innovation atrophy, and the erosion of the brand, paint a much more complex picture of this landmark deal. On one hand, it's a necessary, even brilliant, short-term fix for a company that was falling behind. On the other, it could be a long-term strategic catastrophe. So, what do you think? Is this a smart pivot by Apple, or a deal with the devil that they will live to regret? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. When you step back, Apple's decision feels like a high-stakes gamble. The partnership buys them precious time and instantly upgrades a lagging Siri with remarkable capital efficiency. But the price of that shortcut is control. Each of the 5 traps represents a crack in the fortress Apple has so meticulously built. The privacy promise now comes with a complex explanation. The specter of antitrust regulation looms. The power dynamic with their biggest rival has been inverted, and the brand, built on self-reliance, is now dependent on a competitor's core technology. For the next few years, this may look like a success, but technology is a long game. In leveraging Google's platform, Apple is accelerating its AI development, but in doing so, it has ceded a critical degree of control over its own technological roadmap. History has shown that is a risk Apple has rarely been willing to take, and one that may ultimately cost them far more than they bargained for. If you want more deep dives that analyze the strategies shaping our tech future, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.